General Hospital will reveal interesting details for the week of March 3 to 7, 2025. First, Kristina's fury burned hotter with each mention of Ava. The wounds of the past had never truly healed, and the sight of Ava continuing to weave her way into the lives of those around her only fueled Kristina's resentment. It wasn't just lingering anger, it was a deep, gnawing frustration at Ava's ability to survive, manipulate, and remain relevant despite everything. The tension within Kristina simmered dangerously, a storm on the verge of breaking. Meanwhile, subtle yet unmistakable warnings signaled trouble ahead for Ava. There was a growing sense of unease surrounding her, a creeping danger that she either failed to notice or willfully ignored. Glances exchanged in hushed conversations, veiled threats disguised as passing remarks, and small but unusual occurrences painted a picture of a looming threat. Ava, ever the strategist, had spent years mastering the art of survival, but this time, she might be walking straight into a perilous trap. Kristina couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to be done. Her hatred for Ava wasn't just a grudge, it was a shield against the chaos she feared Ava would inevitably bring. Protecting the people she loved meant confronting the source of the problem, but was it already too late? The pieces were moving, the danger was growing, and in the end, Kristina might not just be a bystander, she might find herself at the very center of the storm. Second, Isaiah had every reason to be concerned about Jordan. She had taken risks before, but this time, she was wading into far more dangerous waters than she had anticipated. The deeper she delved into Jen's world, the harder it became to distinguish between strategy and recklessness. What started as an effort to gain the upper hand was quickly spiraling into something uncontrollable. She was playing a dangerous game, and Isaiah feared she might not realize just how much was at stake until it was too late. At the same time, another battle was brewing, one that could change the landscape of power in ways no one was prepared for. Sonny had never been one to back down from a challenge, and Sidwell had made the mistake of provoking him. Their inevitable collision was no longer a question of if, but when. The tension between them had been simmering, and Sidwell's latest move only proved that he was willing to escalate matters beyond what anyone had expected. The explosion at the penthouse had sent shockwaves through Sonny's world. Michael had been caught in the blast, and while the extent of his injuries remained uncertain, the message was clear: Sidwell wasn't just posturing. He was declaring war. Whether it was a warning shot or the first step in a much larger scheme, Sonny wasn't about to let it go unanswered. The path ahead was set, and there was only one way it could end, with an all-out battle where only the strongest would come out on top. Third, Sidwell's growing alliance with Drew was yet another layer of the brewing storm. By using the Plaza project as a means to stake his claim on Sonny's territory, Sidwell was making it clear that he had no intention of backing down. It was a calculated move, one that combined business with a personal vendetta, and it was only a matter of time before Sonny responded in kind. With Drew unknowingly caught in the middle, the stakes continued to rise, turning what should have been a strategic business venture into a dangerous power play. Meanwhile, Natalia was becoming an increasingly important figure in Sonny's life. Their connection, once seemingly harmless, now carried the weight of something much more complicated. As their bond deepened, it was only a matter of time before the truth of her past with Sidwell threatened to upend everything. Sidwell wasn't just another enemy. He was someone with a personal history that could make things even messier. His resentment toward Natalia, his lingering control issues, and his determination to undercut Sonny all pointed to an explosive confrontation waiting to happen. It wasn't just about business or past relationships anymore. The battle between Sonny and Sidwell was becoming personal in every sense of the word. The tension between them could only escalate, and when the inevitable showdown arrived, it wouldn't be a simple exchange of words. This was the kind of feud that wouldn't end until one of them was left standing, and with so many lives entangled in the chaos, the fallout would be impossible to predict. Fouth, Lois had spent years keeping her secret buried, convinced that the past was best left untouched. The truth about Giovanni, the son she had hidden from the world, weighed heavily on her conscience, but she had always justified her silence as an act of protection. Now, however, that carefully maintained distance was beginning to collapse. With Brooklyn's longing for the child she had lost growing stronger by the day, Lois found herself caught in a web of emotions she could no longer control. The irony was not lost on her. How could she stand by and encourage her daughter's reunion while she, herself, had kept a devastating truth hidden for so long? The walls around her secret were closing in, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. The possibility of Brooklyn's search leading her dangerously close to Giovanni was something Lois hadn't fully prepared for. The more her daughter pushed to reclaim what had been taken from her, the harder it became for Lois to suppress the anxiety creeping in. The weight of deception was growing unbearable, and each passing moment brought the risk of discovery closer. Would she find the strength to come clean before the truth surfaced on its own? Or would Brooklyn uncover the painful reality in a way that shattered their already fragile trust? Lois had always been fiercely protective of her family, but this time, the choices she had made in the past might end up hurting the very people she loved the most. At the same time, Lulu was embarking on a search of her own, one that could lead to dangerous consequences. Newly awakened and eager to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her, Lulu couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Her instincts, sharp as ever, pulled her toward secrets hidden in the shadows, and she was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. But what she didn't realize was that her curiosity could put her directly in harm's way. The past had a way of refusing to stay buried, and the deeper she dug, the more tangled she became in a web of deception, betrayal, and unfinished business. As these paths continued to converge, the stakes for everyone involved only grew higher. Lois was desperately trying to contain a secret that refused to stay hidden, while Brooklyn unknowingly inched closer to a revelation that could alter the course of her life forever. Meanwhile, Lulu's relentless pursuit of the truth threatened to pull her into a dangerous game with unforeseen consequences. The dominoes were lining up, ready to fall, and with so many intersecting secrets, betrayals, and long-buried histories, the fallout was bound to be explosive. Fifth, Nina was treading on dangerously thin ice, fully aware that her actions could come back to haunt her. Stealing the safe deposit key had been a calculated risk, but the potential rewards had outweighed the dangers, at least in her mind. She had convinced herself that she was in control, that she could manipulate the situation to her advantage without suffering any consequences. But the reality was far more precarious than she had anticipated. Every move she made only tightened the web around her, and if she wasn't careful, she could find herself trapped in a scandal that would leave her with nothing. Her plan, whatever it truly entailed, was laced with deception and ulterior motives. She was playing a game with Drew, one that relied on subtle maneuvering and psychological manipulation. If she could push Willow into turning against him, it would weaken his influence and shift the power dynamic in her favor. But that was a dangerous gamble. Willow had already been through so much, and while she had shown signs of softening toward Nina, it wouldn't take much for that fragile truce to shatter. If Willow learned the full extent of Nina's betrayal, all hope of repairing their relationship could be lost forever. The damage would be irreversible, and Nina would have no one to blame but herself. Drew, on the other hand, was a man with nothing left to lose. The betrayal he had suffered at Nina's hands had already pushed him to his limits, and if she continued down this path, he might decide to strike back with everything he had. The secret of their affair was still buried, but for how long? If Drew saw no other way to fight back, he could expose their past to the one person Nina feared losing most, Willow. The fallout would be catastrophic. All the progress Nina had made with her daughter would be undone in an instant, and there would be no coming back from it. The mere thought of that possibility haunted Nina, yet in typical fashion, she refused to acknowledge the risk. She was too invested in her own schemes to see the trap she was walking into. Despite the looming danger, Nina pressed forward, determined to outmaneuver Drew. She believed she could manipulate the situation to her advantage, that she could set him up without suffering the consequences. But arrogance had always been her weakness. Underestimating Drew could be her biggest mistake yet. If she wasn't careful, she wouldn't just lose control of the narrative, she could lose everything she had fought so hard to hold on to. The battle lines were drawn, and with each reckless decision, Nina was inching closer to a devastating downfall. Sixth, Curtis and Stella had never been the type to sit back and let injustice unfold before them, and their growing frustration with Drew had reached a boiling point. Both had their own reasons for questioning his actions, but together, they were ready to take a stand. Their approach wouldn't be reckless, they knew Drew was a formidable opponent, but they also weren't about to let him continue unchecked. Curtis, always the strategist, had been quietly gathering information, while Stella, with her sharp intuition, had been reading between the lines. They understood that taking action against Drew meant stepping into dangerous territory, but for them, the risks were worth it. They weren't just looking to challenge him, they wanted to expose him for who he truly was and ensure that his influence didn't spiral out of control. Meanwhile, Portia found herself ensnared in a crisis she hadn't seen coming. Brad had always been unpredictable, but she never expected him to be the reason she was suddenly at the mercy of Selina. What had started as a financial misstep had now turned into something far worse, she was being used as a pawn in a game she wanted no part of. Selina had seized her vulnerability, and thanks to Brad's actions, she now held all the power. The moment of realization hit Portia like a ton of bricks. She had trusted the wrong person, and now, she was paying the price. The betrayal cut deep, and the rage that followed was almost blinding. Brad, whether out of desperation or selfishness, had handed her over to one of the most dangerous women in Port Charles. There was no undoing the damage, Selina had a grip on her now, and there was no easy way out. Portia knew she couldn't afford to panic. She had to think, to strategize, to find a way to regain control before Selina's hold over her became permanent. But every move she made had to be calculated, or she risked falling even deeper into a situation she might never escape. As the walls closed in, Portia realized that she wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for the people she loved. Selina was ruthless, and if Portia didn't act fast, she knew the fallout could reach far beyond her. Brad's betrayal had placed her in an impossible position, but she refused to let fear dictate her next steps. She would find a way to fight back, even if it meant taking on Selina Wu herself. The question was, how much damage had already been done, and was it too late to stop the storm that was already brewing? Finally, Jack was playing a dangerous game, holding on to secrets that had the power to destroy lives. Each move he made was a calculated risk, but the walls were closing in around him. The deeper he buried the truth, the more precarious his position became. He had orchestrated the perfect setup, ensuring that Jason took the fall, and his dealings with the WSB remained hidden in the shadows. But secrets had a way of surfacing, and with Carly's relentless determination, it was only a matter of time before she uncovered something that would put his entire scheme in jeopardy. Carly had always trusted her instincts, and this time, they were telling her that something about Brennan didn't add up. She had been down this road before, unraveling lies, exposing corruption, and fighting for the people she loved. Jason had been framed, and she was determined to prove it. As she started connecting the dots, small clues began to emerge, each one pointing her closer to Brennan's deception. But this wasn't just about Jason, it was also about Jocelyn. Carly couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening behind the scenes involved her daughter in ways she hadn't yet realized. The thought alone made her blood run cold. Brennan had been careful, but Carly was relentless. If she got too close, he would have to make a choice, double down on his deception or find a way to silence her before she unearthed the truth. He knew how much Jason meant to Carly, and that meant she wouldn't stop until she had the answers. The pressure was mounting, and as much as he wanted to maintain control, cracks were beginning to form in his carefully crafted narrative. One wrong move could send everything crashing down. With the week of March 3rd to 7th set to deliver shocking revelations, unexpected alliances, and intense confrontations, the battle between Carly and Brennan was just beginning. As more secrets unraveled and loyalties were tested, the stakes had never been higher. The question wasn't just whether Carly would expose the truth, it was what Brennan would do to stop her before she did. One way or another, a reckoning was coming, and the fallout would be impossible to contain.